our group. I'm Nicole, this is Felicia, Aaron, and Halima, and this is our project. So, I guess I should, okay. So, the City of Peoria Recycling Curbside Program started in 2007, and since then it's been one of the major reforms that Peoria has been focusing on, with their mission being to find a method to reduce the contamination in the recycling bins that's happening in Peoria. So, because it's costing us money. But the challenges facing the project that we did, there's a lack of knowledge for the Peoria residents on how, on what is recyclable and what can go into the recycle bins. I know that Peoria does have pamphlets that they have sent out, and that they do have education tools that they've used, but the citizens are still unaware of what to put in there and what not to put in there. There's a large population of retired individuals in the community as well, so they may not be as focused or interested in recycling. So there's that problem as well. And since there's contamination in one recycling bin, as they go on through the next, as the truck goes, it contaminates the entire batch. So that's a problem. And then the factors that influence the recycling, the economic factor, the ability of people to spend on environmental conservation practices. The environmental factors influence people in regards to adopting conservation attributes. Physical factors or political factors, such as policy formulation, influence recycling projects. And then the political leaders influence the development of the recycling programs in the area as well. And then again, the problems facing the community. There is a large portion of Peoria that's retired, so they're not aware that that they need to be not putting grass clippings or mixing their non-recyclables with the recyclables, and there's a lack of personnel that takes care of this. And then there's also a lot of large lots in Peoria, since it is pretty out there. There's a lot of larger land areas, so they don't necessarily get the most attention taken towards them. So they tend to, as far as the grass clippings, when they landscape, they have a problem with that, mixing those into the recycling bins.
So, as the other groups mentioned, education is really important. Start with students. An example that we found was in New York. The City of New York, their recycling project, there was a recycling project by Clarkson University in New York. They employed an interesting method to make people aware of their program. What they did is that the project members organized an event in the school where they asked the students to build a human mannequin using recyclable materials. And thus this helped the students recognize the recyclable materials, and then they did a study where they saw that the contamination of the recyclable bins decreased. Another method to continue with education is using volunteers. An example of that was that, to invite volunteers to personally visit the houses and collect recyclable materials. This can help people understand the difference between recyclable products and landfill. And what's really important is to educate on a residential level. An example of that is in the city of Mesa. They are actually using explicit labeling on recycling and trash bins, using bright label colors and pictures that catch the residents' attention. I know Peoria already did that. So, and number 4 is educate using a community-based problem approach, just because there are a lot of retired communities and multifamily communities in Peoria, and some have trouble distinguishing or not aware enough to distinguish between recyclable materials and stuff. Another thing we did is that we looked at other countries, what they're doing, what's working out for them. And what I found interesting was these transparent recycling bins used in Tokyo. Now these bins would make people whoever is passing by to acknowledge the amount of waste they and others are contributing. Just to bring the idea of guilt and overconsumption into the public consciousness. And this can also be used to promote more responsible living. And so, like, if every trash bin on the street was transparent, maybe people would think twice before throwing out their stuff. What I also found interesting in Tokyo was they had these systems called Reveal All Bags. And they had these instructions templates also, just like the ones you find back in the seat of a plane. They give it to everyone, so like no one has an excuse of not knowing what goes in each bag. I wish I could translate everything, but I can't. But they have like details about like what should go in each bag, and what they do is like 4 nights a week they come to take the bags, and the bags should be like neatly arranged in front of the houses. And they're transparent, so like if someone throws something wrong in the wrong bag, they'd either stick a red note on the bag and leave it on the curbside, like a badge of dishonor for everyone to see, or they could just send that red note in a letterbox. And they really have no excuse of not having these bags, because the stores that sell them are open 24 hours. And what's interesting in these bags are that, first of all, they're transparent, and second, they have like the birds can't rip open the bags. So they have like what was it called? Yeah, it's not here. So yeah, they have anti-craw nets colored blue. These are used to make sure scavenger birds don't rip open the bags.
Moving on to policy as a possible solution for a problem. Right now, the City of Peoria has a contamination rate of a maximum of 25%, otherwise the whole truckload is a waste. They can actually take it upon themselves to be responsible for any truck that exceeds that maximum allowable amount. Recent months have actually been showing that Peoria is doing worse off than they used to. The city used to do underneath 25% maximum contamination rate. Now they're exceeding around 33% for some truckloads. So this exceeding of contamination rate causes a lot of fines to be incurred on the city, and definitely puts a financial strain on the city's budget. So I propose that possibly if contamination rate is above 25% in any of these trucks that are from outside sources, like the City of Peoria contracts out the recycling and trash pickup. So if any of these trucks that were collected exceeds 25% contamination rate, the City of Peoria could take it upon themselves to be responsible for that truckload itself, constructs smaller city-operated facilities that take in these trucks that have a high contamination rate and sort the material out themselves, instead of sending the entire truck to the landfill and incurring fees from the outside company. So the benefits of this would be you would avoid the high charges of contamination from this contracted company. You'll avoid total landfill waste of the truck itself, and you actually could lead, the City of Peoria could lead the entire Phoenix area in like sustainable initiatives, and maybe promote other cities to adopt a similar policy if they're having problems such as that. Next slide.
The next one.
Actually, I think that's awesome. Okay. This is a possible proposition if the funds are available for it. Instead of using larger trucks, you could always operate. Backtrack for a second. Instead of contracting out to other companies, individual companies, take it upon yourself to operate recycle and trash collection. Possibly instead of using larger trucks, you could use smaller portable vans, more efficient on fuel, have smaller routes. You can actually pinpoint contamination better, because if it's a smaller truck, there's less chance of it being contaminated. Otherwise, a larger truck covers larger areas, so there's more chance of contamination. Or possibly in the future, we could incorporate different types of collection methods. Like certain trucks will have multiple bins, so instead of dumping all of it into one big bin and then if it's contaminated it gets wasted, we could have multiple sections that separate it, like per community, per area. So if a certain bin is contaminated, only that part will be wasted instead of the entire truckload.
So across the copious amounts of sources and research that our group has provided, We have simplified down to 7 key concepts for solidifying an impeccable recycling program. This includes reinforce communication and outreach, evaluate markets, modify collection techniques, target non-recyclers, communicate with elected officials, support recycling legislation, and also maintain creativity. I'll elaborate on all these as well. So first is reinforce communication and outreach. When it comes to communicating with stakeholders, such as community residents, it's crucial to be straightforward by telling them where, when, and what to recycle. Avoid heavy-handed environmental messages and guilt-based approaches, and instead focus on appealing to the residents' positive gain, such as reducing their carbon footprint. Once the residents are able to perceive that Peoria's Public Works Utilities Department program is fully operating and well supported, many more people will intriguingly want to participate in a higher rate, which results in greater recognition and higher participation. As far as evaluating markets, you have to really look into what's present into the waste stream, and what we have here is paper, glass, wood, rubber, food scraps, etc. And at the end, you want to plan and evaluate the most effective method to divert materials from the landfill. And one of the most effective ways to do this would be to modify your collection techniques. So instead of operating a curb sport program, which is full of flaws, Peoria could look into altering to an automated commingled collection. This is the ability to collect various materials types without having to sort and separate by Peoria residents themselves. Automated recycling collection facilitates full-size containers that supply enough storage space for the recyclable materials. Some advantages of this would be increased efficiency, decreased worker injuries, reduced collection costs. Another concept that needs to be applied would be target non-recyclers. Non-recyclers don't often see the immediate benefit of recycling. Using alternative voice to promote recycling can be influential. Hearing a message from a respected but unexpected person, such as a church leader, can definitely influence a non-recycler to change their recycling importance, perspective, and their bad habits. Nice. 5 and 6 is communicate with elected officials and support recycling legislation. Building support from elected officials is crucial into developing the EPI program. Support needed for Public Works Utilities Department to flourish, obviously to support with money. A fact that I found from EPA is numbers from EPA's Recycling Economic Information Studies show that the United States is home to more than 56,000 recycling and reuse establishments that generate an annual payroll of nearly $37 billion per year. This is something that you want to talk to an elected official about, proving that using recycling programs, effective recycling programs, are beneficial to the community. State and local elected officials have the opportunity to support municipal programs with guidance and funding and demonstrate smart disposal waste reduction on a statewide level, which is always useful. All right, and the last final concept to use would be maintain creativity. I kind of broke this down into 2 ideas. Both of them can be implemented, but you don't. But you also choose one or the other. So the first is partnership with EPA's WasteWise. They're a free voluntary program through which organizations eliminate costly municipal solid waste and select industrial waste. The benefits as their bottom line in the environment and can gain recognition for your community. Another way to maintain creativity would be to implement a pay-as-you-throw program. Residents are charged for the collection of municipal solid waste based on the amount residents has thrown away. This creates a direct economic incentive to recycle more waste and generate less. And then the charge fees for each resident can be based on their bags generated or by weight of the trash, if applied. Right, so, in summary, the Public Works Utilities Department program administered by the City of Peoria has not received enough revenue from materials recycled to offset total costs the city has to pay to run the program. As of late, the residue rate of Peoria has increased, resulting in less revenue received, along with having to dispose residue in fused recyclables and landfills, which is a costly expense. Failure to recycle exemplifies detrimental effects to our environment, such as increasing energy consumption, limiting landfill space, increased pollution, and higher cost. Fortunately, this complex system is still relatively minute and is yet to reach its threshold. However, the sustainability problem is significantly harmful over the long term and must be addressed currently in order to avoid a devastating tipping point. So, based on our findings, we propose that Peoria implement 3 different solutions in order to reduce recycle bin contaminations. These solutions are improved education in the elementary schools, and by adding colorful signs detailing what can or cannot be recycled for the community members. Also, improved policy by passing a law that sets a contamination rate with anything going over the rate being sorted by the city. And last but not least, creating an incentive allowance program that rewards citizens on recycling correctly and reducing the amount of contamination in recycling bins.
Okay, let's thank our team. Okay, to stay on track time-wise, let's just have a couple questions. Any from the City of Peoria first?
I just have one as far as the pay-as-you-throw program. We did look into that a while ago. What we found is that in order to pay less, they were throwing it in empty vacant lots. So it was driving up illegal dumping in the communities. Did you come across any of those findings when you were looking at those?
Yeah, most of the sources I had talked about how the benefits of it. I know that they gave a particular survey in Iowa showing how flexible it was, but no, they never really mentioned the kind of residue that can be accumulated from it. But I did find that it was it saves 4.6 to 8.3 million tons of waste in landfill, saving 18 to 32,000 kilowatt hours per year. So I didn't find any of that, but obviously that is something you want to definitely look into. Even if you're going to use a successful program such as this, there are always going to be some downsides.
Okay, one more question, Mike.
Most of the groups come up with solutions like incentive-based or reward-based, and I was just curious if you guys saw any other cities. Well, I mean, what would an incentive or reward be? How do you monitor one person's recycling or throwing away? Is there going to be a guy with a clipboard being like, yeah, there's this clean, we're going to give them a reward now? How would an incentive program work for a citywide resolution? How do you monitor individuals' progress? Or would it just be, hey, the city as a whole has been doing really well and we're getting less contaminants? Do we, reduce the price of trash cans and recycling bins by, $2 this month for everybody? And then over the course of the year, you save $30 on your program. Would it be something like that? Or what would an example reward be for citizens?
One program that I saw is like the community is more of a raffle. So basically everyone who contributes to the recycling would be entered in a raffle. So it wouldn't necessarily be one individual or the entire community getting the incentive, but one person. So they would want to recycle to try and get into that raffle to try and win. So it's not necessarily always one or all of the people getting paid.
Yeah, and I think that's where like volunteers come in. They have to go personally visit the houses and see like whoever is doing this right and whoever is doing this wrong. Yeah. Any other questions?
I just have one. I thought it was unique that you guys looked at the other countries. I thought it was really nice to see those transparent bags.
Yeah.
The question I have for you was, how much did that help recycling? I know you said it reduced the contamination, but how much
It was actually.
contamination was
Are you
reduced?
talking about the transparent bags?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. These were actually implemented in 2012, so it's something new.
Okay.
So I didn't see like a survey that has like exact numbers. But yeah, I thought it was like interesting enough to mention it.
Okay, thanks, Steve.